long, strange trip. I just got off a big road trip. I'm calling it my pre-retirement Vision Quest bar and restaurant review. This is Mostly Hairless Apes with Dr. Gene Mesco talking about evolution and society. This is, sorry, I've been out for a while, and I'm going to call this season 3, what the heck, because I really think I've figured some things out. I know that's often the road trip to oblivion, but I've been trying to work on this model of evolution and information and artificial selection, and I've decided I'm going nuclear because it's election season here in America. I'm talking in June of 24, and the political commentary in the mass media here is ramping up for the big November election, for whatever silliness we have between these political parties, and I'm trying to decide if there's a huge change coming in the American experiment. And so what I've been working on is this model of artificial selection. If you've been listening, I think I've got 3 listeners out there. But like I've said before, this helps me stay sane. So I'm ranting out to you guys talking about evolution and really wanted to get into the idea of natural and artificial selection again. If you've been listening, I've been working on an idea about artificial selection, and evolution meshes really well with this mathematical model called information theory. Information theory allows anybody to link evolution between mechanisms of natural selection and artificial selection. The natural selection is sometimes called Darwinian selection. It's the whole idea of the origin of species, that you get mutations in DNA and genes change and populations change because there's selection. Because as those mutations manifest developmentally in organisms, they have different structures and functions. Some have increased fitness in a given climate and in a given ecosystem, and more organisms survive and reproduce, and life changes. And since life changes, humans change. We're part of life. And that's always, an artificial bugged me for years, because artificial was always the idea that, oh, humans did it, so it's not important to nature. And I think that's a dreadful mistake that biologists have made. We haven't bothered to really delve into artificial selection. And it's hard, though, because you have to say, what's artificial selection? So I think it's basically when consciousness evolved. As soon as we evolved consciousness, and we don't know what it is exactly, but we know there's something. The theory of mind in neuroscience says I have a self inside my brain that can make decisions. I have free will. And we don't know exactly what the neural circuitry for that is, but we're going to operate under the assumption that free will exists and consciousness exists, because otherwise we're going down the rabbit holes of the Matrix and all those other silly things that are speculations and that we don't have any control. But let's start from the basics, that humans evolved consciousness probably about 50,000 years ago at least, and we've been making decisions about how to alter the natural world. We've domesticated dogs and other animals, and we did dogs from wolves and a variety of others. About 3,000 years ago, we did chickens. We'd been bringing in all these things, and we've been changing the planet. And that's one of the big points right now, is we've been building these civilizations. And here's my model for artificial selection. What humans have to do to function as a group is operate with 3 major artificial adaptations. We're going to call them social adaptations. And those social adaptations are belief systems, governments, and economies. And because we have these things, we can make decisions, or they influence our decisions. They define how we interact with each other. And if we can understand these, maybe even mathematically, we can then set up a whole system that allows us to analyze artificial selection and maybe make better choices about how to run the planet. Because that's really where we are. We're a bunch of mostly hairless apes trying to run a planet. And if you don't think that's funny, I think you missed something. Because what have we done for years? Well, what we've done for years is built up a set of belief systems that most people would call religions. And I gave up on religion years ago. I got annoyed with it. Now, my wife says it was 9/11. And because I was saying, but you go all the way back to the Crusades, you can go back all through history and find points where, because some people believe one thing, and, and another civilization believed something else, and they couldn't prove it because it was a belief. It was only something somebody made up. But they fought over it, and they killed each other, and they took over territories. And I thought, oh my God, what is going on here? Religions, but religions are really useful. That's where I made the mistake. Because a belief system is critical, because we're always operating from ignorance. So let's go back to the idea of information theory. Information theory is the idea that you can code for a pattern of matter and energy in time and space. And from a mathematical sense, it actually counterbalances this physical force called entropy. Because that's what the physicists and the chemists tell us is going on with life. Physics and chemistry says, things will always run down. But life exists because we can resist entropy. We can resist the disorder and chaos that comes about in the universe. And there are physical systems that evolve, like stars and planets. But there is this thing that's called life, and living systems have a very dynamic balance. We call it homeostasis in biology, and that's really related to health. How well we can balance all these variables and keep ourselves stable. And humans have evolved lifespans of a century plus that allow us to be stable in the environment. Other animals have mostly shorter lifespans. Some plants have really long lifespans. I think the oldest documented organism are some bristlecone pine trees, which have been dated to over 5,000 years old. So we've got these abilities to be stable. But for billions of years of life on Earth, it's been natural selection. And humans picked up this amazing adaptation when our brains mutated, our genes controlling our brains mutated and gave us whatever this thing is called consciousness. And because we have this little voice in our head that talks to us and we can hypothesize and think about things, we've been experimenting. And we did nothing but hunter and gather for tens of thousands of years. But eventually we started to build bigger and bigger civilizations. And as we built those civilizations, we needed to have special social adaptations that stabilized. So just like genetic adaptations stabilize natural selection and give us liver function and kidney function, and muscle function, social adaptations give us civilization. And civilization is based on a different type of information. It's mental information as opposed to genetic information in ourselves. And how those things interact is not trivial. Because we make decisions that shape society, and obviously societies and civilizations can kill each other and can kill people and change the course of people's lives. So those are not trivial. But I had foolishly dismissed religion as a trivial aspect of evolution. But it's really critical, because that's the key definition here. If we want to understand a civilization, we have to understand the belief system. We have to understand the core ideas of how they're generating information. Because we never have complete information. That's one of the first things that we have to acknowledge in the Church of Science, is that we are ignorant of some things. We're not stupid. We just don't know. We don't know how certain things work. But the best tool we've evolved to sort that out, then one of the adaptations is science. And science is its own belief system, just like religions. And the big difference between most religions and science, though, is science says maybe there's not a God. And that's what I've been preaching here in the Church of Science, is that what happens when you build a civilization that says, what if there isn't a God? What if we don't make the assumption that there's a deity out there who's watching over us, who's going to take care of us in the afterlife, who can intervene and cause miracles to happen and change the laws of nature? Because that's the big thing about miracles, is that once we start looking at life and we use science as our basic belief system, and we say, what does science have as a belief? Well, the basic fundamental belief for science is that there are natural, consistent properties in the natural world. These natural properties include things like gravity, electricity, electromagnetism, and radiation and all these things that we can measure, that we figured out tools for that allow us to measure them. And we've come up with ideas that we call hypotheses and theories and laws even. I mean, gravity is whatever gravity is. And Isaac Newton came up with an idea about gravity hundreds of years ago. Einstein came up with one, a different one. It didn't change gravity, it just gave us a better description. And that's what science does. That's what you need to believe in the Church of Science, is that science gives us the best tools to understand gravity and other things about the natural world. Because when they tell us these things, we can then manipulate them. And that's what allows us to send satellites into orbit and build a global communication network that allows us to become one unified civilization at the planetary level. Or maybe not, because that's the issue right now. We're arguing about stuff. And here in the States, referencing the political season that we're into, I can't believe how freaking stupid some people are. Then they're not stupid, they're just ignorant. They've embraced a religious belief system. And we have this thing right now going on in the U.S. that is best described as what can be called Christian nationalism. There's a whole subset of people, most of them wear red hats and are following an orange parasite who likes to suck off capital wealth as best he can. And what those people do is think, oh, this Christian faith that we have must be the best way to do things. And there's a deity out there who's going to take care of us. And if the leaders will just tell us what to do, we can have a better world if we follow all these rules. And I have to call bullshit on them. Because I think the real problem is when you embrace a belief system with a deity, you give up some mental authority. You cede the high ground for intellectual power to the priesthood or your leaders, whoever they are, whatever shaman, whatever wizard can talk well enough to convince you that they have the answers that you can't quite figure out yourself. You follow them, and you follow them to the point where you fly planes into buildings, and you follow them onto the battlefield, and you kill people. And I just think it's time to get over that. We have built a global civilization. We have a global economy. What we don't have is a global belief system or a global government that's very functional. We have the inkling of a global government with the United Nations, but we still have 200 nation states, each with all their power structures. And what science tells us to do is don't worry about the people, accept that we're all human. We are all the same species. That's step one that we need to do to build a global civilization. And that's what religions don't allow us to do. Because religions say, unless you believe the same things I do, and you accept the same God that I have, I might have to kill you at some point. Because that's what they do. Running a little experiment here in the 14th Congressional District. And if I put out a Biden sign here, I guarantee it's going to disappear within a week, because there's lots of red-hatted Nazis here who just blindly think blue is evil. Oh, Democrats are evil. How dare they acknowledge that gay people or black people or anybody else is human if they don't believe in Jesus Christ? Oh my God. Let's just get over it, people. There's no proof that any gods exist. That's what I'm talking about going nuclear, because that's what needs to be said right now. People need to step up and say, you know what? Maybe there is a God, maybe there isn't a God, but because we don't know, we should default to the most basic assumption, and that is we might be on our own. We just might be mostly hairless apes, evolving social primates, spinning around a sun out on the edge of the universe, operating under the laws of nature, and we've dreamt up all sorts of explanations. But I think the best explanation we've come up with is, hey, let's use science to figure out problems. And that's how we should be doing. That's the only thing we should be doing in terms of running our society. We should be declaring, I'm a member of the Church of Science, and I don't think there's a God. And because I don't think there's a God, I don't want to listen to your explanations based on God. I don't think they have any merit. Now, the explanations fundamentally don't have any merit, But the practices do, and this is the beauty about evolution. Evolution selects for what works. Just like natural selection says, oh, we need to make some blood proteins. I'm going to assign that job to the liver. We need to clear waste. I'm going to assign that job to kidneys. I need to move around. I'm going to build muscular and skeletal systems. Natural selection gave animals the ability to survive for billions of years, well, millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. Animals have only been around hundreds of millions of years, as opposed to the billions of years of life on Earth when it was mostly just cells trying to work out all that molecular chemistry that keeps us alive. How do we catch sunlight? How do plants catch sunlight and turn it into sugar that animals can eat? All of that fun chemistry has been evolution experimenting with life on Earth. And then when humans came along and figured out consciousness adapted, and then we were able to think. And that's what we have to do. We have to be able to think. And that's what gods tell us not to. They just tell us to believe and accept whatever somebody tells them. And that's the problem with science. And that's why science is hard for a lot of people. A lot of people don't accept science because what science causes you to do, it says you have to have doubt. And doubt is the opposite of faith. Faith says, believe me no matter what. And I'm asking for faith in science because it's the simplest assumption. There's this property that gets used in science and other fields, but it's called parsimony. And it's the idea of the simplest explanation. Assuming you can think, and that you have a brain that functions, and you think about problems, and you say, and you get down to the fundamental point of ignorance where you say, we don't have any information about that. What's causing the universe? Why is there air? What's life? What's all of this? You have a basic choice to make. You can say God did it and dismiss all your doubts and accept that the church of whatever has all the answers because somebody in there can talk to God. All I can say is you are ripe for the picking then, because once you're convinced, once you accept that faith and say, oh, there is somebody out there, then you have to listen to those rules. You have to, because all of your logic is now built around keeping that deity alive in your brain, even if there's no proof for it. And there is no proof. If there is a God out there, let them strike me down for my blasphemous speeches. But that's where we are right now. And I think if enough people can step up, and I think come November, enough Americans will step up and say, enough of this crap. Enough of you yahoos saying gay people or black people or brown people or immigrant people aren't human. And we took America from the Native Americans and we own it. And we can do whatever we want with it. We should keep everybody else out. I accept the fact that we have a government and we want to make rules. But as a human, we have to figure out a way to live with each other. And I think we can build a better society if we actually all embraced science as our primary belief system. That's what we need to do. We all need to join the Church of Science and start from the assumption that there may not be a God out there. Maybe there isn't. There might be. And religions have been useful. Religions, this is like I said before, this is where I was wrong about religion. Religions are useful adaptations because they allow you to organize large groups of people. They allow you to get rid of doubt and put faith in this or that deity, which then translates as to acceptance of leadership from this or that priesthood. Whatever priests step up, whatever leaders step up in a given belief system and say, this is the most important thing. We all follow along, and we follow those rules then that they generate. And we've been doing that for millennia. And we did it for thousands of years with kings and royals. We thought, oh, these people are special, as they were the better biological specimens. They stepped up at times of crisis, and they led people through times of trouble. And they invoked this or that god at different points. But then along came a different society, a different civilization with a different deity and a different king, and who had better resources and came up with some better ideas, and they had better technology, and they fought about something, and they won. And that society fell by the wayside. I mean, read your history and figure out how many deities and how many civilizations and how many monarchies have fallen by the wayside. And where does that leave us right now? Well, I'm a 21st century American sitting here enjoying the American experiment. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, there's a set of ideas I think everybody could get behind. And the Church of Science embraces that American ideal. I think America has been one of the great places to expand the Church of Science. Lots of people accept it, and we've incorporated it into our economy and our government, and we've tried to fix some problems. But we still have this religious residue that is in our country. And the religious residue is toxic at this point in history, because that's what enables people to put on red hats and say, oh no, you have to do it this way, and if you don't do it this way, you're evil, and that's going to lead to problems. I hate to say this, but from my perspective, there's going to be people who are going to get hurt before we get to November, because these idiots that are out there that are not accepting of rational, logical thoughts because they think there's a God out there, and no matter what, their God is the most important thing, and they operate from that perspective, they're going to be manipulated by people who can tell them, God said this to me. I mean, if you listen to anything on the right wing right now in America, there are all sorts of preachers telling us, oh, we've got to do this. This person is speaking for Jesus, is speaking for God. And I just have to say, you don't have any proof. You are making this stuff up. You're reading it from these ancient texts. And the thing to do scientifically, if you bother to join the Church of Science and accept the doubt that comes with saying, we don't know. That's all you have to do to join the Church of Science. It says, I don't know about gods. What I do know is that physics works, and chemistry works, and biology works, and medicine works, because we've gone through the scientific method, and we've experimented with things, and we've produced things, and we've produced this model world with these global markets and networks where you can go on the internet and buy something in freaking Indonesia, and it can be on your doorstep in 2 days, if not sooner. And that's freaking amazing. It's wealth beyond imagination. And we were told by other priests in the economic markets, the bankers, they tell us, oh, we have to do things certain capitalist ways. Well, you know what? But democracy is the key thing here. If we really want to appreciate what's most important about life, it's life itself. We got to keep us alive. We got 8 billion humans now. I know plenty of people who say, oh, that's too many humans, and we've expanded. We have freaking reproduced like bunnies over the last few centuries. 200 years ago, there were less than 1 billion of us. Now there's over 8 billion of us. And we're sucking up resources and building things and trying to stay alive. And most of us are doing it, the majority of people are doing it, with the idea that there's some God watching over their shoulder. And because of that, they are willing to follow this or that leader, as opposed to looking around and going, hey, wait a minute. What can I fix? What if I'm just a cog in the machine here? I'm just a fellow human, and all that we should be doing is taking care of each other and taking care of the planet. And that's going to be the political campaign for the political arm of the Church of Science, which I like to call the Garden Party. Because I think step one, the only thing we should be campaigning on is ecological prosperity. We should be working to preserve the planet's natural cycles. What natural selection has worked. Because now here's the real test. Natural selection has been working for billions of years, maintaining stable environments, allowing millions of species to evolve. But for the last 50,000 years, humans have come along. And when we were few in number, we didn't have that big an impact on anything. Although we did drive a few species to extinction. When humans showed up in the Americas, there's a nice fossil record that shows we cleaned out the mastodons and the saber-toothed tigers and the giant sloths. And we drove plenty of species to extinction. We did it again with the American Revolution as we conquered the continent. We drove a variety of species to extinction. And we're doing it all over the planet now, because as with any adaptation, it's not perfect. Evolution doesn't move towards perfection. As much as we'd like that idea, that's one of those ideas we get out of religion that says, oh, there must be something perfect out there. We don't know what it is, though. Some people say, oh, if we all believe in this or that deity, it'll be perfect. But that's not what we can get with science. Science just says, can we make it better? Is there a better way to improve this? Is there a better way to do this? And that's what's allowed, because that's what the economy does. That's what people who make money do. They figure out, oh, there's a better way to do this. But the problem with governing from economy is the only thing that matters is making money. That's how we got an orange parasite leading one of our major political parties, is because if you just say money's the most important thing as opposed to God, then you just make decisions that make money, and it doesn't matter who gets hurt. Just like religion has the double-edged sword of saying, if they don't believe what we believe, they're not real people. We can kill them, or we can do things that harm them, and we can stop them from doing that because we believe we believe we know all the answers. Let's just step back. Let's accept that we are mostly hairless apes and that we don't have all the answers. We could laugh about the fact that we're a bunch of mostly hairless apes trying to run a planet. And we can ask the question, how do we make it better? How do we stabilize communities? How do we work together? And we stop arguing about all of these big picture things, and we look around and we say, gee, there's homeless people, there's pollution, there's people sucking up huge amounts of resources because we don't regulate the economy. We let the economy run off, just like we let religious people go off and say, oh, religious freedom. But religious freedom, freedom of belief, just says, I'm free to believe just like you are. But there's no proof for any of it. And separation of church and state needs to be part of that. Because you're free to believe and I'm free to believe, I don't want to be told what to do by you because of your belief system. And unless you can bring some facts, unless you can bring some data and show me that things like, oh, wait a minute, the climate is changing. Oh, wait a minute, we are polluting the environment. There are huge wastes of plastic in the environment. Maybe we ought to start regulating the economy a little more and talk about what would we like to happen in the ecosystem. Maybe we would like to not drive so many species to extinction. Maybe we'd like to prevent spread of diseases around the planet. Maybe we'd like everybody to have better nutrition and better education. And maybe we should do that. And maybe we should cap some of the ridiculous income levels that allow individuals to accumulate huge amounts of wealth and disproportionate amounts of resources so that they're outside of political control, they're outside of social control, because how do you regulate a billionaire? They can buy their own island and do things. We just have to step back a little bit and say, what are we going to do for the majority of the people? What do the people want? Most of us just want a little bit of home and life to take care of our own space. And I think we should all just tone it down a little bit and vote to share a little more, to be a little nicer to each other, and maybe cap some of this top-end stuff. And let's make it all back into having a community where everybody needs to be involved in the civil process. And the people who are billionaires don't get to just do what they want. They don't get to shape the economy. People should shape the economy. We should shape the economy to solve our problems. We should shape the economy to say, what do we want? We all want good jobs. I want work that's meaningful to me. I don't want to make something for somebody else. I don't want to do that. But that's how it works right now, because that's the system we have. But it doesn't have to be that way. And we'll just continue, hopefully, our long, strange trip next week. Thanks. Thanks for listening.